All right, we are diving into one of the most intense, in-your-face chapters in the entire Bible, Ezekiel 16. We're going to zero in on verses 23 to 29, where the prophet uses this really shocking metaphor of an unfaithful bride to call out a nation's deepest betrayals. It's powerful stuff, so let's get right into it. Wow. Yeah, right out of the gate, the language is just raw. Ezekiel is not pulling any punches here. He's using the most graphic, visceral imagery of betrayal you can imagine. And this isn't just for shock value. It's a very deliberate attempt to wake people up from a kind of spiritual coma. So you have to ask, right? Why this specific, incredibly graphic metaphor? Well, it's because Ezekiel is diagnosing a problem that's gone way beyond just individual, private mistakes. He's talking about a pattern of betrayal that has woven itself into the very fabric of the nation's politics and its religion. Okay, so let's break down how this spiritual crisis actually showed up. The first thing to get is that this was not something happening behind closed doors. Oh no. This sin spilled right out into the open, becoming public, visible, and even built into the city's architecture. The passage kicks off with this repeated cry, "Woe, woe unto thee." Now, in the world of the prophets, that's like a giant flashing red light. A single woe is bad enough, but a double woe, that signals a major escalation. It means we're past the point of isolated mistakes. This is now a settled, stubborn pattern of rebellion, and judgment is coming. Now, the text uses this term high place, and you might picture, some lonely altar on a remote hill somewhere. But that's not it at all. Ezekiel's whole point is that these shrines were everywhere. They were for idol worship and fertility rites, and they were built right into the public squares and busy intersections of the city. So the key takeaway here is that idolatry had literally become civic architecture. Think about that. It's built into every street, at every major crossroads. The very layout of the city is teaching people to be unfaithful. This isn't a secret sin anymore. It's an institution. It's a public monument to a broken relationship with God. And this is where that whole intense metaphor really expands. Ezekiel basically recasts Judah's entire foreign policy as a series of adulterous affairs. He paints this picture of the nation desperately seeking security from powerful empires, from anyone and everyone, except God. First up in this tragic history is Egypt. For decades, Judah's kings kept running to Egypt for military help. They completely ignored prophets like Isaiah, who were shouting from the rooftops that this was a terrible idea. And spoiler alert, it was. The strategy completely imploded when Babylon just crushed the Egyptian army, showing everyone that Egypt was a powerless savior. And notice Ezekiel's wording here. He calls Egypt great of flesh. That's a direct shot at their perceived military might, their big armies and impressive chariots. Judah's sin was swapping its faith in God for a simple human calculation of military power. They trusted in Egypt's armies more than God's promises. So, the affair with Egypt taught a really tough lesson. Chasing after strength without faithfulness is a total dead end. It might look like a good security plan, but in the end, it just leads to disappointment. But did they learn? Nope. The pattern just keeps going. The next lover is Assyria, the regional superpower of the day. Around 735 BC, King Ahaz gets scared and, you guessed it, he appeals to Assyria for help. But this wasn't just a political deal. He literally imported Assyrian religious designs right into the temple in Jerusalem. I mean, that is a profound spiritual betrayal. And listen to that key phrase again, and yet couldst not be satisfied. This gets to the very heart of the problem. The alliance with Assyria didn't bring peace. It didn't bring security. It just brought domination and made them even more dependent. The hunt for a savior had to continue because the real issue was something deep inside. So the affair with Assyria? Just as futile as the last one. Trusting in this huge imperial power just got them tangled up in messes that weren't theirs, and it never delivered the peace that the nation was so desperately looking for. This whole downward spiral ends with the final lover, Babylon. And here is the most devastating irony of all. The very empire that Judah tried to cozy up to for influence and protection ends up being its destroyer. The affair ends in 586 BC in total catastrophe, with Jerusalem destroyed and its people dragged into exile. Now, Ezekiel makes it crystal clear that these actions don't happen in a vacuum. They have direct, humiliating consequences. This isn't just a private failure, it's about to become a very public shame. This is honestly one of the most stunning lines in the whole chapter.
God says he's going to hand Judah over to her enemies, and he specifically names the daughters of the Philistines. The ultimate humiliation here is that Judah's behavior has become so extreme, so shameless, that even her pagan, longtime enemies are morally disgusted by it.
The irony is just staggering. Judah, the people of the covenant, are acting with such shameless spiritual promiscuity that their own pagan adversaries, the Philistines, are looking on, repulsed by their conduct. It's a shocking reversal that just highlights how far, how incredibly far, the nation had fallen. So, after laying out this whole catalog of failures, Ezekiel drills down to the real root cause. And it turns out it's not really about bad foreign policy. It's about a deep, profound spiritual sickness. When you lay it all out, a clear pattern just jumps off the page. Each of these nations was a different kind of false savior. Egypt offered visible military might. Assyria offered dominant imperial power. Babylon offered global political influence. Judah basically treated each one as a substitute for God, a shortcut to security that never, ever worked. And we come right back to that haunting line, the final verdict on the affair with Babylon, and yet thou wast not satisfied. This is the theological core of the whole chapter. No alliance, no army, no political scheme could ever fill the void that was left by their broken relationship with God. The problem was never really external. It was this insatiable hunger within.
So this ancient text leaves us staring at a very modern question. It forces us to look at our own lives, our own societies, and ask, where do we place our ultimate trust for security? What are our modern-day Egypts and Assyrias and Babylons? The powers, the ideologies, the things that promise us satisfaction but can never actually deliver? That's the challenge Ezekiel's metaphor leaves ringing in our ears.